Okay, great. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. In this very moment, we are 93 people here connected in this very moment, and we hope to have even more because, 275 basically enlisted, so we hope to be more. So we come from basically every corner of the world, and we are here together united to show how we can build a hope, not a passive hope, but something which is making possible this hope to have a better world, to have hope in the world, especially for women who suffer the injustice, the inequality, the violence, and the exclusion. Since our last meeting, of course, in the month of February, plenty of things have occurred, both in the church and in the world. In this time, we have, with gratitude, bid farewell to Pope Francis, during whose papacy we witnessed historical changes. Women who received the roles of responsibility in the Vatican, women who voted for the very first time in a synod. Pope Francis was the Pope of the suburbs, and have brought the attention of the church to the fact we have to care for our common home, the earth, okay? For all human beings, the excluded and the marginalized. Even he started renovation of structures, in church towards synodality. So we have to be grateful for his life and his good actions. So now we welcome the new Pope, Leo XIV, with expectations and hope. His name and his first words will give us hope to, think about the fact he cares about justice and worldwide peace. So we ask Leo XIV to keep going on the path opened by Francis in building a brotherly church, which is, of course, courageous and just like, determined on this path, because women have to receive, the equality, just like, their brothers men. So we ask him to open completely the door Francis opened before, and all the women can at last receive the equality and the dignity they deserve and they dream about. So we know that this thing won't come from above. We have to be us, okay? It has to be us to make it true. So this is the very aim of today's listening session. So we are very happy to be here in this extraordinary listening session, okay? We have gathered people and women from 5 different continents already living the church we dream about. So they belong to communities where women with determination and bravery are builders of hope in their places. So we ask each and every one of them in 7 minutes to speak about, what they do and what they experience. So after that, we'll have the customary breakout rooms to exchange opinions and to ask questions, of course. So we hope you like this session. Thank you so much. We start now with a prayer.
Hola a todos. Bonjour a tous. Allo Luta. Ciao a tutti. Hello, everybody. Want to read a short reflection by Iliadelio, then just a few moments silence and a short prayer. Hope is the main impulse of life. Hope must be born over and over again. For where there is love, there is always hope. Because we're so quickly led to despair, most of us cannot endure suffering for long without some sliver of hope or meaning. However, it's worth asking ourselves about where our hope lies. My friend and colleague, Sr Bridget, writes about mystical hope, a complete reversal of our usual way of looking at things. Mystical hope isn't tied to a good outcome, to the future. It lives a life of its own, seemingly without reference to external circumstances and conditions. It has something to do with presence, not a future good outcome, but the immediate experience of being met, held in communion by something intimately at hand. It gives us the sensations of strength, joy, and satisfaction, an unbearable lightness of being, but mysteriously, rather than deriving these gifts from outward expectations being met, it seems to produce them from within. It's all too easy to understate and miss that hope is not intended to be an extraordinary infusion, but an abiding state of being. Just a few moments silence. And now a short prayer, which I've developed from the Anglican Church's prayer for International Women's Day. God of all, God of hope, we pray for women and girls today, that they will be all that they can be. Give us courage to speak and work for equality and justice, both within and outside of the church, until the earth is filled with righteousness and love, and abuse and oppression are no more. We pray this in the abiding hope that your Spirit is with us and will infuse us with hope to sustain us. Amen.
Thank you, Mary, for that lovely reflection and prayer. Now, I'm Cathy Corbitt, and I speak from Perth, Western Australia, the traditional lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. It's my privilege now to introduce to you our first speaker. Dr. Eleanor Flynn is a medical graduate with qualifications and experience in education and theology. She retired from clinical practice in palliative care and as a medical educator in 2019. Her Master of Theology thesis considered the connections between images in the Office of the Dead in late medieval books of hours and modern palliative care. She co-teaches a course on death, dying and grief through the lens of art and spirituality at the University of Divinity. She and colleagues are currently interviewing faith-based funeral celebrants about their experiences during and after COVID-19. She is the co-founder of Women's Wisdom in the Church, known as WITCH, the co-chair of the Australasian Coalition for Church Reform, and a member of her parish safeguarding group. You are very welcome, Eleanor.
Thank you very much, Cathy. And I'm on Wurundjeri land, the Kulin Nation here in Melbourne. Thank you for the introduction and for the opportunity. I'm a naturally optimistic person, a cradle Catholic who lives in hope that the Church as an organisation will recognise that women are made equally in the image of God and by their baptism are equal. While I'm waiting for that to happen, I've become involved in various groups and activities to live out my hope and my understanding of God's immense love for all of us. I'm going to start from the parish and move through various groups to the Universal Church. I'm blessed to belong to a very inclusive Catholic parish where we welcome everyone, from openly gay couples to those people who wear mantillas and kneel to receive the Eucharist. The community also includes a lot of people born outside Australia who bring their own cultural ways of being Catholic to our celebration, which includes the local Coptic Catholic group who use the church on Sundays and join us for joint celebrations on relevant feasts. The parish welcomes everyone to hospitality, particularly larger gatherings on feast days, and we've had an increase in recent congregations and some adult baptisms. And my interaction with the people I see each Sunday fills me with hope for the future of small, inclusive parishes. Small groups are an enormous source of hope for many people, especially women. And with my friend, Dr. Claire Rankin, I co-founded a group which was now called Women's Wisdom in the Church. We're mostly Catholic. We meet regularly. We started because we were so horrified by the lack of appropriate response by the Australian bishops to the Australian government's Royal Commission into the institutional response to sexual abuse of minors. We wrote to the bishops about that. And then we also wrote to them when they decided to close the Office for Women that they had set up after a research study they commissioned showed that women felt their voices were not being heard in the church. Apart from writing to the bishops and getting some of our thoughts into the media, we were active in bringing Sister Joan Chittister to Australia after our local bishop blocked her attendance at the Catholic Education Conference. And we also helped get a very difficult priest moved from a very large group of parishes he was attempting to destroy. In the last 3 years, we've worked with the local Anglican diocese to conduct an ecumenical evensong close to the feast of St. Phoebe, run by women with prayers written by women. Last year, we had senior school students reading the prayers, which filled many of us with hope. And we had a Catholic woman scripture scholar preaching in the Anglican cathedral, which filled many of us with great hope. Another activity has been organising women to preach at Catholic churches across Melbourne, which we've done for the second year running, which has been very positively regarded by the congregations and by the priests involved. We also write and conduct our own hope-filled liturgies and support the Australian Catholic Religious against trafficking and the work of the Mercy Sisters in adult support and education. I run a weekly email on providing articles on religion from a feminist slant, which keeps people up to date. There are lots of other groups across Australia, including several women and the Australian Church groups, WATAC, and numerous others which are reform-minded, each with their own particular charism. These are ecumenically inclusive and also put on events. The WATAC at this year is running a conference, Shining Bright, Living Loud, Standing Together, in November in Sydney this year. Some groups in WATAC have theology book clubs, and also many of the groups associated with ACCCR run their own liturgies. Many of these, as I said, most of these groups belong to the Australasian Catholic Coalition for Church Reform, which attempts to gently nudge the bishops, get his ideas into the media, and run webinars to introduce people to ideas about church reform to our very large group of subscribers. It includes a group in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and has connections with people in other parts of Oceania. We do regular mail-outs of material we think will interest our subscribers. The hope from these activities is that the connections between people who all want an inclusive church filled with light and love, and a decrease in clericalism with an increase in the possibilities for women. One of the things that connects Australian Catholics to each other and the church is the responses of many to the request for information for the Plenary Council in 2022-2023, and then the Synod on Synodality. I'm not suggesting that we got what we wanted from these gatherings, but the activity of getting together to think about what sort of church we wanted encouraged and energised many people to either form or to join existing groups. And these activities have been a source of hope for many people and connected them to other people who support church reform. I guess one of the positive side effects of COVID has been the transition to video conferencing and streaming, which allows people who would not have known each other or the existence of other groups to become involved with them, as we are doing today, and that people can reach out across the world to each other for information and support. which started connecting with root and branch just before the pandemic and has continued since. We became members of Catholic Women's Council once we discovered its existence, and one of our members was part of the group that planned Australia's contribution in 2023 on sacramental life. ACCCR has regular connections with We Are Church Ireland, We Are Church International, CCRI and Spirit Unbounded, and publicises the activities of groups everywhere to encourage people to connect. I was interested when discussing Pope Francis' death. I was fascinated by the number of people who knew that I was Catholic and had no particular religion themselves, who wanted to offer me their condolences. They obviously felt that Pope Francis was their Pope, and that they had lost a friend. I think his impact is still being felt, and we hope that his message of todos, 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 plus his preaching on climate change, might continue in the church. His inclusion of women in top roles showed his belief that they are the people you appoint if you want something done, as he told my daughter's friend, who was the Australian ambassador to the Vatican. The lack of movement in the female diaconate is almost certainly political, because some regions would not accept them, and Francis valued unity above all in the church. And we know that the Anglicans had a long and difficult time getting their hierarchy to accept the ordination of women. But indeed, in Perth, in Australia, the Anglicans have a woman archbishop. This gives me hope for the Catholic Church. However, we have a long way to go. We hope that Pope Leo's emphasis on appointing women and recognising their gifts will continue. Those who know him well all mention his ability to listen. His motto, in illo uno unum, in the one we are one, which comes from one of St. Augustine's reflections on Psalm 127, stresses the value of each person and the unity of human beings in Christ. It expresses the human dignity that underpins social teaching in the Catholic Church and makes us all responsible for the good of everyone. Let us hope for a church that we all want while doing whatever we can to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Now we move to our next speaker, who will be speaking on behalf of Asia, and I'd ask Virginia to introduce her to us.
It's my pleasure to introduce my compatriot, Dr. Kochurani Abraham, who is an Indian feminist theologian, researcher, writer, and trainer on issues related to gender, sexuality, spirituality, and ecology. She engages with liberative theological forums committed to justice and liberation, such as the Indian Women Theologians Forum, the Indian Theological Association, Ecclesia of Women in Asia, World Forum of Theology and Liberation, Indian Christian Collective of Justice, and Indian Christian Women's Movement. She is one of the founders of Sisters in Solidarity, a group that accompanies closely women survivors of clergy sexual abuse and those affected by gender-based violence in India. Over to you, Kochurani.
Thank you very much, Virginia. Hello to everyone. I've titled my intervention as Daring to Hope, a promising challenge. To me, daring to hope is a loaded expression. In order to comprehend what is implied by this, we need to consider the context from which one dares to hope. Therefore, I draw your attention first to the gendered texture of the Catholic Church in India. Christians constitute 2.3% of the Indian population, of which 1.57% are Catholics. spread out in 174 dioceses, which cater to the religious needs of around 23 million people who are active practitioners of the Catholic faith. For anyone assessing the vitality of Catholicism in terms of numbers, this is a very promising situation, a vibrant church in a Hindu nation. And surely one might think, what has this to do with the theme of our reflection today? In the Indian context, I set the question of women daring to hope within the canvas of the gendered shadows that fall beside the dominant mode of being church, which is numerically powerful in terms of the practicing Christian faithful and in its institutional power. Women are very much present in this church, but as passive recipients filling the pews, or better said, as loyal consumers of the religious products doled out by clergymen. Religious women, who number more than 100,000 in this country, run very many institutions, mainly in the field of education and healthcare. Yet, within the ecclesiastical spaces, they are exploited as cheap labor force. The highly clericalized leadership structures of the church that exclude women serve to legitimize the culture of patriarchy that is a marking feature of the Indian social fabric. Consequently, the many forms of gender-based violence, particularly sexual violence that women experience, go unaddressed or perhaps get perpetrated by the church that is deep-rooted in gender inequality. It is in this pathetic situation that daring to hope becomes a challenging yet a promising venture. Evidently, some questions could emerge here. Who are the women who dare to hope? What are they hoping for? And how do they exercise this hope? As I see, women who dare to hope are those who believe that gender justice is integral to the well-being of humans and the earth. They hope intensely to see the church emerging as an inclusive and egalitarian community that can stand with credibility as a sign and sacrament of the gospel vision, the new social order initiated by Jesus Christ. I think it is important. I think it is important. Just a second, excuse me. The screen is not coming to my text. Okay. Sorry. I think it is important to ask what this expression, daring to hope, entails. Indisputably, for women who dare, hope is not a passing feeling, but a commitment. It is a commitment that women make primarily for their own sanity by refusing to remain victims of unjust situations. However, this daring is not to be seen as a ride on a smooth road. It involves a relentless struggle. I take here lament and resistance as two essential elements of the struggle. Lament in this context is not to be seen as the cry of the powerless in despair. Lament implies naming the pain, becoming critically mindful of its deeply ingrained concerns, and sharing these with those who stand by in a deeper bonding of solidarity. Lament becomes liberatively significant because in this solidarity, anguish and hope are interwoven. A collective lamenting can then become transformative, as it would help identify alternatives to hopeless situations. Resistance is another basic ingredient that keeps hope alive. Resisting oppression helps to identify the life-negating factors that are operative in any given context. Say no to them with decisive sharpness, and then move forward with a determination to make a breakthrough. Resistance thus becomes the antidote to victimization, which can facilitate the transition from a victim to a survivor. Resistance becomes more effective when exercised collectively. In India, some of us with feminist theological sensibilities have begun a collective called Sisters in Solidarity, or SIS, that Virginia mentioned. SIS accompanies survivors of gender-based violence in the church, particularly those afflicted by clergy sexual abuse. SIS stands by survivors, resisting any moves by those in authority to protect the abusers and penalize the victims further. Resistance thus opens the path for the survivors' healing, enabling them to reverse the outcomes of violence and, in the bargain, exercise agency to bring about change. To conclude, I find daring to hope an embodied experience. It is my conviction that Spirit Sophia is at work as she gives us women the energy to go beyond the dead end of hopeless gender inequality in the church. When women dare to hope, there is prophecy. It is a prophetic subversion of the narratives of subjugation, denial, and exclusion, which in turn enables in women the capacity to exercise intellectual and spiritual agency. Spirit Sophia calls women to be her prophets, who can midwife with her the emergence of a new way of being church, a church not modeling patriarchy, but the gospel praxis with the daringness of Jesus Christ. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kochurani. Thank you particularly for your discussion on what it means to dare to hope, because that's a question I'm often being asked. So now we move on to our German speaker, Martha Heizer. Regina, will you please introduce her?
Guten Morgen, vielen Dank. Dr. Martha Heizer is
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Martha Heizer studied pedagogy and psychology and worked as religious educator at the University of Innsbruck. She has worked in the church for over 50 years, almost 40 of which for reformist organizations. In 1995, she co-founded We Are Church Austria, and in 1996, We Are Church International. As a member of various reformist organizations, she co-initiated numerous initiatives and ideas. For example, the idea of European women's synods on various topics, which would address important issues affecting women. One of the synods should, for example, also examine the question of whether there are religious practices, ideologies, and roots that make us women ill, and what is beneficial for their health and what is harmful on the other end. Thank you, Martha. Please. Thank you so much for being with us today. So we'll just face this topic properly, okay? So hope is a delicate plant. The floor is yours.
Okay, dann starte ich von vorne. Liebe Leute, schön euch zu sehen.
Okay, great. Can I start from the beginning? Thank you. Okay, so it's great to see all of you here joining us. When I think of hope, well, and I reflect upon it, many individual stages of my life come to mind. I've always advocated equal rights and equal dignity for all believers in the church. And often I have placed hopes on the first places. And, I've often been disappointed as a consequence. Some examples, well, I'll just give you some of them. The first one, well, it goes back to the 1980s when I founded a political ecclesiastical working group with important personalities from the diocese and university. Worked, thoroughly. Many letters were sent, also petitions were made, and phone calls were made too. Well, we got no response from church leaders, except from what a bishop said, the politics of church are none of your business. You are lay people. Then, in 1987, a General Assembly of Bishops occurred, and it was held on the theme Vocation and Mission of the Laity in our church. And we prayed a lot in our parish. We fasted for a whole week. And the result, well, guess what? Everything that lay people can't do and was disguised as gentle phrases, okay, if you allow me to say that. In 95, we started a petition of the faithful people throughout Austria and received 500,000 signatures. The reaction was, similar. No contact with these people. I repeat again, and it was Cardinal Ratzinger who said that to the president of the Austrian Bishops' Conference. Well, after that, plenty of actions were taken from both big and small, churches, but we have to react. We thought it was our time to react, and people told us you have to do nothing at all. Then in 2013, Pope Francis, well, he changed and improved greatly in the best way. Of course, the face of the church was a facade, but he disappointed all of us on the women's issue. Then in 2014, my husband and I were excommunicated for what? Well, for celebrating the Eucharist without a priest. So the sign we sent was understood by many, but not by the church leadership. Well, then in 2019, we had the Amazon Synod, and the signs were really promising, but, the result was disheartening. In 2014, well, the same goes, and also 2024, of course. And these many years of disappointment have made me not disappointed anymore. You know why? I no longer expect anything from the church leadership. At best, they can surprise me a little, just a tiny little every now and then. So I ask myself, where can we find hope? Just because, there is a new Pope and we have a holy year, the Jubilee year? Well, let's ask ourselves. There are three important pillars on which I place my hope. Okay, first things first, here in Europe, and that's the first pillar, okay, the first, founding, column, the shortage of priests, means that in many places, women and sometimes even unordained men are taking on roles and ministers which they're not officially assigned to them. They lead parishes, they preside over religious services, they administer the sacraments, and these women are welcomed by the people, Two examples, let me give you this. Among, the many ones, women tell me is, I quote, I have never experienced such a beautiful Easter vigil like this. 3 women organized it. No priest present. Thank God. Another quotation, another example. In Austria, a woman said, my wife is dying. I need you as my wife for the anointing of the sick and then for the funeral. I can't do anything with the priest. He's no good at all. Now, thank God, we have these women, plenty of women who take these responsibilities and are fully committed to the cause in order, that, the local church is edifying for these people, okay? So my hope is that, there will be even more and more in the future. My commitment right now is to raise awareness and empower women so that more of them dare to break the boundaries of church law. The second great pillar, or column, if you will, is the quotation from Václav Havel, which is really fitting in the situation, okay? It exactly expresses what I think. I quote, "Hope is not only the conviction something will turn out well, but above all is the certainty that something has a true meaning, regardless of how it turns out to be." That's in a quotation. So this allows me to observe with, a calm state of mind what's happening at church leadership. This doesn't mean I'm always spared, anger and fury. The contrary, my hope, nonetheless, is based on the fact that I remain firmly convinced that it makes sense to strive for equal rights and equal dignity for everyone in the church. The third pillar, well, is you. The people who support the international reform movements have become friends. And they, always support me when I feel, disheartened, discouraged, especially in those moments, just like if I was their mother. After all, we are resilient, we are strong. Our requests are already shared by many bishops and they are being discussed at the World Synod. I still remember in 1976, during the Inter Insignores, it was concerning the priestly ordination of men only, I had, stomach issues. And I also had fever. And in that time, I felt very alone with my horror. Today, after so many years, I am aware that I am on the right path to the kingdom of God, alongside many other women and men all around the world, where all the human beings are considered, just children of God. On this extent, I thank you so much. You are super, truly precious to me. Thank you so much, dear. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Martha. You're surely a prophet. I didn't realize that you had been excommunicated by Francis. Very sad.
Oh, but it doesn't hurt.
No. Okay, so we move on now to our speaker from Africa, Sister Bridget, and I ask Anastasia to introduce her, please.
Thank you very much. I will introduce Sister Dr. Bridget Rose Temen. She obtained BA, BEd, MEd leadership, was born in Bulawayo and grew up in Nairobi, north of Rhodesia in Zimbabwe. She received her secondary education as a boarder at Notre Dame in Kroonstad before going to Rhodes University, where she majored in history. She joined Sisters of Notre Dame in 1963. And after her novitiate in England, returned to South Africa, where she has been in this ministry. Sister Bridget Rose taught in several high schools, worked in Justice and Peace Ministry, and he had several terms in leadership among the SNDDENS. She was a second director of the Catholic Institute Education in 1988 to 1988 to 1998. More recently, she worked in facilitation, leadership, training, and organizational development. And currently, she worked at Zim as a archivist. She has written several articles and books from the material stored in these archives and considered the current book an appropriate culmination of her various ministry. And that's where she is and still living in South Africa. Thank you very much, Sister Bridget. Over to you.
Thank you, Anastasia, and greetings to all of you around the world. When I was invited to contribute to this afternoon, after reflecting, I came up with 5 moments that inspire hope in me and that I think are available to all women in my part of the world. We are currently celebrating the liturgical season of Eastertide, the season of hope par excellence, the celebration of Jesus' resurrection, defying all odds, death and its power, its sting, as the poet John Donne called it. The role of women, both in Jesus' living and dying, but particularly as the messengers of his resurrection, is surely a call to each of us. In recent years, scripture scholars have been uncovering the role of Mary of Magdala, not only in Jesus' life, but in his immediate post-resurrection. She who anguished on Calvary was consoled in her depths on that first Easter morning. Celebrating this Easter season in my parish and the part played by women in it has stirred us as women disciples of Jesus today, even as we recall Jesus' words, "Behold, I am with you always, even to the ends of the earth." In the Northern Hemisphere at this time of the year, Eastertide is celebrated appropriately in spring. Here in South Africa and elsewhere in the Southern Hemisphere, we are aware of the approaching winter, heralding for us in South Africa, or in Johannesburg where I live, 3 months of dryness, drabness in our countryside, icy winds, and all around us the signs of nature's demise. Johannesburg, where I've lived for several decades, is some 5,000 feet above sea level. We call it the Highveld. This height above sea level, as well as the position in the interior of the subcontinent, impacts on our winter season. And as the last flowers bloom, I find myself steeling myself for what is to come. But year after year, each September, before any rains have fallen, what always seems a miracle to me, nature brings the trees, bushes, and plants to rebirth. This rebirth of creation is such a reason for hope. And I'm reminded again and again that creation is the primary revelation of the life and love of our Creator God. At the time of Pope Francis's death, which, as somebody else has noted, was felt so much by so many people in our world, we were frequently reminded of his gift to the faithful of synodality rediscovered. This practice involves all of us in deep listening to what the Spirit is saying in and through each person's life. As I look around me in my local church communities, I'm aware that this new or rediscovered way of being together in communities of faith could easily fade out of existence. My hope is that in this year of hope, we won't let this happen, that there will be enough of us keeping it alive, using the synodal way to find the Spirit of the living God as it struggles within each of us to form us into the unique images of God we are called to be. Synodality as a process, well used, deepens my faith and my hope. Another Francis-inspired process is the Laudato Si platform, calling us to hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. and to respond with courage, care, and in community. Today, exactly, is the 10th anniversary of the publication of Francis's encyclical letter. I hope that we will all make use of the Laudato Si platform in the hope that the smallest efforts on our part can make a difference. The election of Robert Cardinal Provost to be successor to Peter as Leo XIV is, for many of us, a deep reason of hope. As someone who's been formed by the social teaching of the Church during the 60 years that I've been in ministry in this part of the world, I realized the significance of the name Pope Leo XIV had chosen. And I'm deeply hopeful that social justice will be a prominent part of the new Pope's agenda. Let us prayerfully support him in this onerous task as a leader in our broken world. Much has been said of his gifts of serenity, of listening, of being able to move through conflictual situations, all of which gives so many much hope. I hope that when I hear and read about small groups of women around the world who have taken as their mission resistance to the centuries-old patriarchy deeply entrenched in our church, so different from the experience of the first century followers of Jesus, who lived out no separation between Jew and Gentile, male or female, that Pope Leo will be open to listen to us. For all of us 21st century followers of Jesus, I hope for non-violent creativity and faithful perseverance to reaching the goal that Jesus prayed for, that all may be one. And I hope Pope Leo XIV will listen to us. The final area of life that dares me to hope in my corner of the world is a new movement launched, no, not in the church, but including many of the churches, launched recently in South Africa by a man and his women colleagues under the title Human Bridges. The movement's sole aim is to create activities that drive and promote racial healing throughout South Africa. It is premised on the acknowledgement of the racial and ethnic prejudices each of us has imbibed through our socialization and human formation. The movement is not about naming and shaming, but about helping inner reflection to enable each of us to acknowledge and accept ourselves and others and move beyond the present divisions. The movement has lessons for all of us, where racism and xenophobia are ugly presences in our community. To conclude, I affirm hope as a bold act of resistance and a wellspring of resilience and faithful trust in the Spirit's power, available to all of us if we keep our eyes open to what is happening all around us in creation and in our human communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Bridget, for giving us an insight into what you're experiencing in your part of the world, in the African continent. The Bridges initiative sounds very hopeful. And interesting, the Pope's motto is "In the one, we are one." So we move on now to our speaker from North America. Actually, Denise is from Canada. And I ask Kochurani to please introduce her to us.
I feel very happy and proud to introduce Denise Couture. who is my friend and colleague in the World Forum of Theology and Liberation. Denise Couture is an associate professor at the University of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Having retired after teaching at the University of Montreal for over 30 years, she continues to contribute to the field. Her research focuses on intersectional feminist theology, women and religions, and Christian theologies from a liberation perspective. She is the Executive Secretary of the World Forum of Theology and Liberation. She is a member of the Religions, Feminisms, and Genders section of the Network of Feminist Studies in Quebec. In terms of grassroots groups, she is a member of La Autre Parole, a feminist and Christian collective in Quebec. She is editorial editor of the academic journal Liberatio of the World Forum of Theology and Liberation. And also she's in the editorial board of the journal L'Autre Parole. She has published widely in feminist theology. Her latest book is Feminist Spiritualities for a Time of Transformation of Relations, published by the University of Montreal Press in 2021. Over to Denise.
Bonjour. Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon. Well, basically everyone. I'll start talking about, this intersectional feminism, if you will, especially the one, which originated here in Quebec. And then, of course, I'll speak all in French, as you can see and as you can hear.
Voilà. Je parle aussi à partir de l'expérience de l'autre parole.
I also speak, starting from an experience of L'Autre Parole, which is like, a group, a Christian-based group, which I belong to since the very early years of my life, mostly composed of Catholic women, since Quebec is a deeply rooted Catholic tradition. L'Autre Parole is like an ecclesial area of women, just a space of spiritual life lived freely, in complete freedom. And this gives us, incredibly original feminist rituals. For us, this is basically translated, the women ecclesia, in a synod for women. That's what it means. And is well rooted in this. L'Autre Parole will celebrate its 50th anniversary next year. Along the years, it has welcomed something as 30 or 40 women, okay? And these are a few of the images contained in the magazine L'Autre Parole, telling my, of course, experience with the creativity of the whole thing. The method of L'Autre Parole, it's about building and rebuilding or deconstructing the dominion, ideologies which always surround us, especially about the liberating existence experience. And in this time of despair for many of us, it takes a huge deconstructing effort, especially Montreal. The Quebec metropolis is only just 1 hour away from the US border, a stone's throw, you could say. And this is a time which brings us in despair, in which President Donald Trump has, gone back to the US, presidency, and now is taking the power from the people like a deserve, giving to the undeserving one, eliminating the intellectual left-wing party, not only in the US, but also in the world, spreading among its supporters a hatred policy, adopting white supremacist policies, arbitrary deportations of non-residents, and on top of that, it just pushes women to be once again secluded in their household sphere. is basically adopting, I mean, President Trump, fascist practices, and everything he does, well, he creates, criticism. It's easy to tell, right?
Nous vivons dans un temps désespérant.
So basically, I'm saying again, we live in a desperate time, a sad time, in which even after the synod on synodality, the Roman Catholic, church leadership, members still, keep desiring the same thing, okay? Something, only from God and not for women. There's a kind of structure which is not egalitarian among men and women, of course. And it's always a kind, this fascist approach Trump has. We know very well, we live again a sad time. We're living through this sad time, and we are aware that women within the church, they can be hope, but sometimes this hope is not enough. Hope gives us something more for the future, for a better future. But what kind of, open-mindedness do we choose? That's the question. Do we need a weak bond or a strong bond with the future? Do we need a weak hope? Because, weak hope, it makes us wait passively until, the hope is brought about. While a better, strong hope, it pushes us to just acknowledge, to make it happen. The feminist ecclesia hopes for this, a strong hope of women made by women, for women. And this allows us to hope. It means, hoping now, it means a better world tomorrow. Well, to this extent, I interviewed plenty of women coming from different, walks of life, of religious life, and plenty of them confessed they were living in more spheres, more spaces, more walks of, religious life. Not only the ones imposed, but also the ones they created. They told me how important it was for them to be able to spot the difference between these two backgrounds. Starting, one and the other one, moving from one to another one, about the ecclesia. The feminist ecclesia is teaching us to deconstruct the whole thing in order to build new life circles which are intertwined. Many of us are basically going through this, spheres. Okay, back again. Sorry, a few slides, are just missing. Sorry. Okay, I was saying, spiritual life, real spiritual life for women is a fully lived experience among plenty of relationships, animated by the spirit. And this, of course, implies the joy, the suffering, the abuses, the recognition of the very abuses and the refusal of them. Mitume, a Quebec theologian, who is also the co-founder of Lettres Paroles, was describing the Easter of women as the passing step to make it again and again in order to have the liberation. And this, kind of step, it involves a creative act. And Christianity, which is representing the embodiment of this kind of religion, is needed. And adopting the Christian grammar as from the Autres Paroles, we just agreed on this. Basically, each and every one of us represents freedom. The very thing we need. Using hope for women ecclesia, it means doing today what we hope for our future. Thank you for listening. Thank you all.
Thank you, Denise. It was lovely to have a voice from Canada, specifically because of your neighbour down the south. Now we hear from our last language speakers, and I'm asking, they're from South America, and I will ask Teresa to introduce them to us. Thank you.
Van a ser dos personas que se han repartido el trabajo. we will be hearing from two people who subdivided their presentation from the Núcleo Mujeres y Teología de Guatemala. It's an association working for more than 30 years in Guatemala. It's been acknowledged for its days for awareness and programs of feminine and ecofeminine theological formation, trying to promote a new awareness and to create new relationships of equity and justice. We will hear from Marga Tamayac, mestiza woman, mother and grandmother, feminist theologist, teacher in the Núcleo de Mujeres y Teología, working in the social center with women, children, and elderly people. And we will also listen to Santas Matias Gomez, beg your pardon, Maya Mam from Guatemala, with Huahuentenango or origins. I hope I said it well. She's a sociologist, specialized in violence and peace in the University of San Carlos de Guatemala. She is licensed in the Núcleo Mujeres y Teología, and now she has been studying in the spirituality and ecofeminism course of study. She has been caring for elderly people. She has 4 brothers and sisters, and she is a lover of plants and life. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Okay. My name is Marga, and I'm very happy to be here with you all in this ecumenical space of the Catholic Women Council. The Núcleo de Mujeres y Teología de Guatemala, as you already know, was formed 30 years ago by the impulse of a group of women who promoted in a different way, a different approach to theology from the reverse side of history and from the perspective of women. Now, during this journey of formation, this long journey of formation, more than 6,500 women have been trained. We are a group of women believers whose mission is that of promoting and producing critical feminist theological reflection, which generates in other women new ways of relating to ourselves, to others, to nature, and to transcendence. Our desire is that of having an ecumenical feminist space that promotes, through theological reflection, the human and liberating growth of the women of Guatemala, and also having an impact on the strengthening of a just, tolerant, egalitarian society, being respectful of all forms of life. Our wish is for healthy, free, and joyful lives in fullness for all women. And this is why we offer training spaces in which we share our knowledge and feelings and reflections in a very organized way. We carry out annual theological conferences, as well as diploma courses in feminist theology and ecofeminism, training workshops for women groups, talks, training for teenagers and children. We also have a blog and a library, without naturally forgetting about our internal training. It fills us with hope when we see how the learning in these formation spaces of the Núcleo means a positive change in the lives of girls and women. workshops, theological workshops, are a very valuable space in which we all nourish ourselves from the wisdom of the invited theologians, and where we weave alliances with others. We connect and strengthen ourselves in the face of the patriarchal and ecclesial system that excludes us because we are women. In spite of the attacks against our rights, even in recent times, we dare to have hope. And not a naive hope, because we represent half of humanity and the great majority in our church. Therefore, we are not passive in any way. Our work as sowers, which we carry out with so much care and commitment, makes us understand that it bears and will continue bearing fruit, because we ourselves are the fruit of those courageous women who came before us. Our voices have been getting louder and louder, and even if we don't believe it, each one of us has been forming, replicating, infecting, as to say, inspiring others. And in this way, each one of us in our daily lives is becoming leaven for those to come. No one can stop us from longing, imagining, and dreaming of another network of life for our girls of today and for those of the future. No one can stop our hope, because it is supported by the source of life and strength of our hearts. Thank you very much. My name is Santa Matias Gomez, and with this opportunity, I would like to tell you about my experience of the diploma course I received 2 years ago and how much it has helped me. I came to the Núcleo de Mujeres y Teología with many expectations, because for some time I had distanced myself from the church for many different reasons, and some of these are the exclusion of women in important positions and the misrepresentation of the Word of God used as law, but without taking into account our realities and contexts. For example, when they said that women could have the children that God has commanded, and women who use contraceptives were frowned upon. Now, this seemed to me very contradictory, because there are women and families who could not offer a dignified life to their children. Participating in the formation initiatives of the Núcleo de Mujeres y Teología, I completely changed my perspective on religion and spirituality, because I listened to and analyzed the different contributions and analysis of women theologians. To give a few examples, I listened to Carmen Bernabé, Geraldina Céspedes, Cynthia Mendes. These are just some of the women theologians who cleared my doubts and helped me understand why religion excluded women. Historical memory was also a very important element in this reflection, because I began rescuing the contribution of many women who fought from their spaces to contribute to changing the injustices experienced in the church. They assumed they took on the consequences of their actions by challenging an established belief system that only favored half of the world's population. In addition, I came to understand that all church structures are permeated by patriarchal machism, which limits the holistic growth of women in society. Even though there is still inequality and exclusion in the participation of women in the major spheres of the church, this does not mean that there are no women fighting to change this reality. Now I understand that spirituality is inherent to the person, to the human person, who lives it, feels it, thinks it, and is free to live it as it makes him or her feel more fulfilled and humane. This fills us with hope, because it is the Ruah, or the spirit, that guides and connects us all to what exists. Women who participate in these groups are all filled with hope, and this is true also for me, because it helps us to question our way of living our faith. It helped us to deconstruct our knowledge that did not contribute to living our faith. Now that we know, this helps us to recover our spirituality, which fills us with peace and love, and it makes us feel freer and more connected to nature. What fills us with strength as women in Latin America are the alliances, support networks, dialogue, and the accompaniment that we are provided to live out our faith in a healthier and more harmonious way with the others and with all those who surround us. We are aware that we will continue to struggle because there are indeed great and small advances that arose and will continue to arise to improve this reality, and to make us see that more women know and live their faith from spirituality, because we know that in diversity we can find strength and awareness and knowledge. Moreover, women have been continuing contributing from their professional spaces and fields, sowing seeds of hope, because the Ruah guides women and has accompanied them throughout history to contribute to the kingdom built by Jesus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, very, very much, Marga and Santas, for your words. What gave me hope was seeing so many young faces in your photos, which we just don't get to see in most of Australia. And the imagining and dreaming, and then we make that real. And Santas, your talk about the spiritual, to be spiritual, spirituality is what counts, our individual spirituality. Contemplative prayer, we listen to what God wants and we move forward with that conviction. So now we have a few minutes for you to put some questions into the chat. Any questions you may have for our speakers? Any comments you'd like to share? I've been thinking about this event that we've been putting on, and it reminds me a lot of the book and the film Women Talking. So this community of women who were being abused, men and women, families, but the women were being abused. And in the end, when the men left the community went into the town, the women then decided what they were going to do. And they had three choices: either to stay and accept the status quo, or to stay and advocate and fight for change, or to leave and create something new. And well, we've certainly seen choices 2 and 3 through the talks that we've had tonight. But I do recommend you do watch that film if you get the opportunity. And I'm also reminded of the Psalm 146, put not your trust in princes, in humans who cannot save. Blessed are those whose hope is in their God. And I think that's what Santas was also saying. Okay, so if we got any questions. Yes, Francesca.
Yes, there is one question from Marta. Perhaps Marta, you can... Marta, du hast eine Frage. Du kannst Deutsch sprechen.
Deutsch.
Okay, so we're speaking English now? Not in English, I'm sorry. Well, what I'm really interested in is the true foundation of this core. How did this happen, okay? this kind of reason, okay? So who was the backer? Who was the financer, okay? Which are the spaces, okay? Who's giving this kind of spaces and extra, budget for this? That's what I'm interested in, because in Austria, with church, basically we didn't get any money whatsoever. So we had to struggle to fight. Like 500,000 people basically involved in this movement we started, but basically it was just something like, without money. So what I'm really interested in is who is the backer, who is the financer, who is financially supporting this. Thank you.
La pregunta es para las mujeres del núcleo.
Any questions?
So the question is for the women of the core. Magda, Sandra? Basically, since the very beginning, we had a kind of voluntary, basically, mainly voluntary work, because we are a very active group. We succeeded in finding several sources for the financing. We currently have a very meticulous, management, so that we have all the money necessary to cover everything. Everything is accounted for. So we, as women, we also undergo training to understand this. And when we don't have the budget, well, we are basically acknowledging it, because we always find new volunteers. Nevertheless, we still have some, donations coming from the church. Well, exactly. If you ask me, I can't divulge this kind of information in a detailed manner. However, over the last 30 years, basically the mechanism has been, well, this. We have largely contributed, all of us, each and every one of us, with our time, our commitment, our efforts. We have had plenty of meetings constantly. And I do believe, if you ask me, that the secret is the energy of Ruha, our guide spirit, moving along us, between us, allowing us to be here with you and to be the way we are. Lubia from our core, would you like to say something? Thank you again. Thank you. Actually, I would like to add that in a very long time, CFB, in the current acronym, well, basically, they helped us a lot, greatly, I would just say, for a long time. Especially for Latin America. These are kind of Austrian plan addressing, Latin America. And these diplomats, they have been really key, fundamental, I would just say. We have collaborated with plenty of organizations, European level and also abroad in Latin America. At the moment, we don't have the right figures, as Marga was saying before, because, the people in charge with this administration, well, they're not here, but we have plenty of projects, let me tell you that. The associates are several. We are like, non-governmental organizations at the moment, but before we were just basically individual people. Now we are non-governmental organizations, NGOs. Now we are basically conformed with law, like, we are abiding by the law. Thank you. Thank you again.
Are there any questions, more questions in Spanish?
Hay una pregunta para el grupo, para el núcleo.
I've got a question for the core. It's coming from Latin America. Or somebody who wants to answer. Well, they ask us if you had any kind of connection whatsoever with the, the responsible one of the Curia, the woman in charge. I don't know if you know her, if you met her in the past. Of course, I know her. When I, went to Rome some time ago, we met. And the meeting basically had nothing to do with the core when she came to Guatemala last year. But she came for other reasons. She didn't come for dealing with the feminist group's theme. Anyway, we know her very well. She didn't work directly with us. But who knows, perhaps if you text message her, we might be together, talking on these themes as well. I would like to invite all of us as an exhortation also in this space of reflection, because what has been a fundamental meeting for the Latin American women, the core. Well, some months ago, can't remember the day exactly, but 2 months ago, give it or take, we had an official presentation, and this is a content which is available and is also pleasant to be heard. Well, all in Spanish. We don't have, the translation for that. Maybe we'll give you the link if you want. Thank you. Thank you again.
Martha Eugenia, you have a question? If you'd like to
Martha
unmute
Eugenia.
yourself.
Hola, buenos días a todas desde Ciudad
Martha,
de México.
unmute yourself, please.
Okay, welcome. Hello. Thank you again. Well, I don't have any questions actually, but I would like to give a brief comment on that. I am truly happy, truly honored to be here with us in this very listening session. And even since last year, I've been always here with you in these sessions. I'm one of the students of the core. I'm a theologian. And something which really concerns me is what we have been saying about the ecofeminism. In this moment, I'm still studying the theme. It's a very interesting theme, very interesting theme. It is also presented in a way which is appealing and detailed in the same way. And it's truly relevant since, studying theology for me is part of life, my daily life. However, studying the ecofeminism is something somewhat new to me, and it's something really paramount that the majority of women today should take into consideration, not only to live it through it, but also embrace it, spread it so that many more women will be able to join in the future these virtuous circles. We have to live it through a feminist perspective, especially in Latin America. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, Martha. Virginia.
There is a question from Penelope for Eleanor. She's asking about women preaching. Can you elaborate? Do you mean in parishes or online? Do you also have laymen preaching? That's a question from Penelope to Eleanor.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we have women preaching in parishes. We chose parishes that we thought would be open to this, and one of them was the parish with the Vicar General. So once he'd said yes, numerous other priests said yes as well, and then we repeated it again this year. There has also been a program that was run by WATAC and the Grail, which was women preaching online, which finished up this year in March after 3 years. But this particular event was just in Melbourne and was women preaching the sermon on a particular various Sundays. We still have a few to go this year.
Can I ask Eleanor a follow-up question to that? Is the preaching done after the gospel, or is it done? It is, okay.
No, it's done at the time the sermon's, and introduced as the sermon.
I've heard it happening in Perth, but not after the gospel. It's done after communion.
Yes, as a reflection. Yes, some churches do that, but this is a specific. We say, please, can they do the sermon?
There's another question. Do you have repeated online
There is
liturgies?
an English.
Sorry, Virginia,
Yes,
are
in
you
English.
asking Eleanor that question?
This.
I think that this question is meant for CWC or to
Or
everybody.
anyone.
To anybody. Do you have repeated online liturgies?
We don't. We just do our liturgies in our group on the day. The group in New Zealand, Be the Change, they do an online liturgy every couple of months.
si je puis répondre sur les liturgies, à l'autre parole, nous créons de nouvelles liturgies à
When it
chaque
comes to
année.
Autre Parole,
Nouveaux thèmes que nous étudions.
we try our best to organize and arrange every single year, so on a yearly basis, a day only focused on the topic we face, like, one topic only for each day. So basically, we never fear the liturgy, but we just, write the very thing. So it's all written, and we call it in French, feminist celebration.
Comment pourrions-nous faire pour nous réunir davantage?
How could we do, basically?
De partout dans le monde qui convergeons.
How could we reunite again, gather up again, to just be here with all the women coming from every corner of the world? How can we be together to be even more visible, to speak up even more in front of everybody else? So that's the main question I would like to ask you.
Is that something you would like CWC to organize, Denise?
Peut-être, oui. Peut-être.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could be. It could be. Why not?
It's something, gives us something to think about.
In India, we organize the Indian Women Theologians Forum, which is a collective of feminist theologians. We organize online liturgies, not in the form of a regular mass, but to celebrate events or like Mary Magdalene or many occasions like that. And when we meet in person, we never have any priest coming to celebrate mass with us. We organize our own agape celebrations. We call it agape because otherwise we will be suppressed by, kind of. So it is a political terminology, agape, but we celebrate Eucharist in our own terms. And then another thing which we have started doing in Kerala as part of the Indian Christian women's movement is to do the foot washing ritual every year outside by women and with the collectives we want to choose, because we want to exercise agency, not only as the apostles, but as Jesus Christ doing the foot washing.
Thank you, Kochurani. Mudita, you have your hand up.
Yes. In India, and I'm talking about our congregation at Sapphire College in our chapel, many times it all depends on the priest, and very often Jesuits come to our chapel to say Mass. And I know on a few occasions the priest says, I'm coming to say Mass, but one of you will have to give the homily, and we have done it. Sometimes on the spot he will say, why don't you respond to the gospel, or why don't you respond to the readings of today? And we've done it. So it all depends on the openness of the priest. Also, for Maundy Thursday, for years we have been doing, women have been the apostles, women have done, we've taken chances to wash the feet of men or whoever is there sitting on those chairs every year for several years. And usually it's the openness of the priest. If the priest said, now tomorrow is our centenary of canonization of our foundress, a Blessed Sacrament Father is coming. According to liturgical rules, we cannot change the readings on a Sunday. But we asked him, can we change the readings on a Sunday? And he said, fine, go ahead. So it very much depends on the priest. Some fellows, or some priests, Orthodox fellows say, no, you can't change anything. You have to have two readings. Whereas our congregation, tomorrow, I'm the liturgist for tomorrow, we asked, can we do this? Sure, they said. No problem. So I think it all depends on the priest who is officiating or who is celebrating. Thank you.
Cathy,
Aquí,
we have
aquí
several
hay
comments
de
from the
algunas
jury.
personas con respecto a lo de
Yes,
a la
here
pregunta de
we have a
liturgies
question
online.
concerning online liturgies, and
En el chat que
they
WAC
were saying in
International
the chat that
organiza
WAC International
mensualmente
has been organizing on a
Eucaristías por
monthly
Zoom, que
basis
Future Church
Zoom liturgies,
tiene
that
también
Future Church
liturgias
also has liturgies and preachings by women, and Future Church United States also does something similar, and the Roman Catholic women priests also organize hybrid liturgies. I think this is it. And there's also another question, and I think it comes from Malcolm Nazareth. I think it's in English. I don't know, Virginia, if you can please read it out.
Virginia.
We will just share it.
We Are Church International has a mass on Zoom every month. Okay. And it is prepared by lay people, and there is a homily that is shared by everyone. Meti also said, she's from India, she said it all depends on the priest. And Patricia also says, the problem, it depends on the priest. It is not something we can do legitimately. So ultimately, it all depends on the priest.
Martha, you have your hand up.
Un comentario breve.
Well, yes, just a very quick comment. How can we empower women to take up this role? But I think all of us, with our participation, have been providing ourselves with an answer. And I would like also to give you a witness. Some years ago, 15 years ago, more or less, there was an encyclical letter the Emptoris Missio published, and in one of the paragraphs we read something that I was really interested about. It was something that had to do with John Paul II, and we read that in the Areopagus there was the sign of the new evangelization. And I didn't really understand what they were meaning with that and what kind of impact they had. But now I can understand that even if I don't have the answer on how to implement more and empower more women, I think this is just the right way to go. We need to continue spreading this message, doing it all in our contexts and situations, and everything that has been said, even before all the preaching that we could hear, is a witness of the answer that we need. And just another thing, we need to trust our intelligence and our creativity. Every context is different, and nevertheless, we can bring about change. And what is really fundamental is to be trained. If each and every one of us is increasingly trained on a daily basis, and at the same time we reach an action point to start from all together, we will bring about change. I was really passionate by the idea of daring to hope, because only if we dare, we can really have a crucial point. We know we are supported by RUA, but we also know that we need to work very hard. Even if we will not be able to see the answer in our life, a complete answer, nevertheless, we will see great results. And one of these results is the fact that we are here all together sharing, and this gives us hope. And therefore, just in this very moment in which I'm speaking to you, even 15 years ago, it was impossible for me to understand what were women or men communicating to me. But now I understood finally what I need to know and to communicate. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Martha. Regina, I believe there are a couple of questions in German.
Ja, wir haben auch einige Kommentare genau zu diesem Thema.
Yes, we have some comments concerning this topic.
Auch darauf hingewiesen, dass es auch in Deutschland einen sogenannten
Many times we have been talking about the fact that in Germany there's also a normal day, a preaching day, and this year there were more than 200 women participating from all over Germany preaching, and in some cases they were also responsible for religious functions. And so we organized this day that has been increasing in popularity, has been organized for many years. It has been increasing also in size. We have many more parishes participating actively. And we also highlighted how important it is to create evidence and not just words. By ourselves, we will not be credited with facts, and women will need to take on their own rights by the concreteness of their own facts. At this point, we will have increased participation. Thank you very much.
I pass on to you, Regina.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mir bleibt
Thank
am
you very much,
Schluss
Cathy.
nur noch
Now,
einmal
what am I
allen
left
Dank
to
zu
tell you at the end of
sagen.
this
Also
meeting?
vielen
Well,
Dank
just
an
few
alle, die diese
things. First of all, I
Veranstaltung
would like to
möglich
thank
gemacht
you
haben.
all,
Vielen
thanks
Dank an die
everyone, those
Rednerinnen
who
für ihre
enabled
Beiträge
this
und die
event to be
vielen
carried out.
hoffnungsmachenden
Thanks our
Ideen und
speakers for
Visionen,
their
die wir heute
contributions and
gehört
speeches
haben.
that really
Ein ganz
increased our
besonderer
hope
Dank
and
geht
vision
wie
based
immer
on what
an
we
unsere
heard today. Great
Übersetzerinnen und
thanks, as
Übersetzer,
usual, to
ohne
our
die diese Veranstaltung nicht
interpreters
möglich wäre.
and
Dank auch an alle,
our,
die im
yes,
Team, die
interpreters
seit
without
vielen
whom
Wochen
we
dabei sind,
couldn't
diese
possibly have
Veranstaltung
this meeting.
vorzubereiten.
Great
Wir
thanks
werden
for
auch in
those
diesem
who
Jahr im
accompanied us
Herbst
in
mit
the
einer
organization of
weiteren
this
Listening
event and that are
Session
part of our technical team.
weitermachen.
In the
Informationen
fall,
hierzu
we
finden
will
Sie wie immer
continue
auch
with
auf
our
unseren
listening
Internetseiten
sessions. You will
und
find
auch auf Social
further
Media. Wenn
information
Sie
on
selber
our
Ideen,
website and
Vorschläge
social
oder
media
Themen
pages.
haben,
And if you
von
have
denen Sie
any
glauben, dass
possible
sie
idea or
interessant sind, dann können
suggestion
Sie sich
or
gerne mit uns in
insight that you
Verbindung
would like to
setzen
share with us
oder
because you
schicken Sie
think that
einfach uns Ihre
might
Ideen
be
per
interesting,
E-Mail.
you can feel free to write
Wie
us an
schon
email and
bei der
share
letzten
with
Session
us your
werden wir auch dieses
insights.
Mal wieder die Beiträge über
During our
unsere
last session,
sozialen
we
Netzwerke und
already
über
said that we will make
YouTube teilen.
available
Also
all the
schauen Sie
speeches
bitte
on
in den
our
nächsten
social
Wochen
networks,
immer
but
mal
also
wieder
on
rein.
YouTube.
Da
So
finden Sie
in the
dann die
following
heutige
weeks,
Sitzung,
check
aber Sie
our
finden
channels
auch
and you will
alle
have the
anderen Sitzungen,
possibility
die wir
of
bisher hatten,
reading and listening
mittlerweile in
to
den
the
meisten Sprachen
speeches
dieses
we
auch
listened to
umgesetzt.
today and
Ja, vielen
also
Dank nochmal an alle.
having a look to the
Einen schönen
materials of the
Abend
past
noch,
events. Thank
einen
you very
schönen
much,
Tag, einen
everyone. I
schönen Morgen, je
wish you all
nachdem,
a
wo
good
Sie gerade
evening, a
sind.
good day,
Thank you.
a good morning, a good night, based on where you are located. Thank you very much. See you soon.